Chess is like marriage. It's an institution where you never graduate. And to make it even more interesting, you have to try out something new almost every time. And that's what grandmasters call novelties, moves that are unusual and seemingly new to an opponent's eye. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, I'm going to introduce what I think will be a new gambit to most of you guys, which you can also take as a surprise weapon against your opponents. Disclaimer, this will be suitable for rapid chess, blitz, and bullet, and it can work against the king's pawn game as well as the queen's pawn game. So let's begin with the queen's pawn game. The move I recommend is pawn to g6, as if you want to play the modern defense. But there's a gambit and so many traps that are coming. If you check the master's database or even the lichess database, you'll find that pawn to e4 and pawn to c4 are the top played moves in this position. So let's start with pawn to e4. After this, your opponent is expecting you to fianchetto your bishop, play pawn to d6, and maybe develop your knight or maybe your king's knight first. But the move you want to shock your opponents with is pawn to f5. Guys, this is called the fianchetto gambit, like for real. The idea is that if white takes, we do not take back due to this checkmate. So if you run into this, don't say I didn't warn you. So instead of taking back, the move you want to play is pawn to d5. But in the real sense, you are offering white to take your second pawn, which is the top played move, by the way, after which you take back. Though white is up an extra pawn, believe you me guys, there's literally nothing that they can do here to prove their advantage immediately. Yes, your king side is messed up, but you have a long-term plan to castle long, and you are going to see how exciting this strategy is. The top played move in the lichess database you can check is bishop d3. They are attacking your weak g pawn, and under normal circumstances, you'd love to play bishop f5, that's okay. But the move I recommend is queen d6. Why? Because you're stopping bishop f4 first, the London bishop, and at the same time, you are defending your g6 pawn with your queen. And that's why the top played move in this position in the lichess database is knight to f3. You can see with your own eyeballs. And after this, you simply go bishop g4, pinning that knight. Check the lichess database once again. You are going to see that most white players are not comfortable with your bishop sitting on g4. That's why they play pawn to h3. You can see that. So after pawn to h3, thou shalt not worry about this move because white can't take your bishop due to rook takes. So just leave your bishop right there and develop your knight. Your queen's knight will most of the times be sitting on c6. And see this rapid development I was talking about? Your queen side is now clear and you are ready to castle long, given a chance. Knight c6 comes with an attack on d4, so white has to protect that pawn somehow, and then you go pawn to e5. Why? The secret of any gambit is quick development and aggression. You want to be very aggressive and continuing to attack. Because the more you attack, the more you give your opponent many chances to blunder. DE is the top played move. Then you simply take back with your knight. Your bishop is very safe. White's knight on f3 is pinned to the queen, so white has to do something, maybe queen e2, which is the top played move that pins your knight on e5. But now you're afraid to take that king's knight, and after gf, you simply castle long. Your king is very safe. See what has happened to the eval bar. Stockfish now says the game is equal, if not black having a slight advantage. And what I've been doing all this time is testing this repertoire against the top played moves in the lichess database, and you saw that, which tells you to say 90% of the times when you play these are the things that you're going to be seeing, because these moves are novelties to your opponents. The game may continue as follows: bishop e3, you take the light squared bishop, and after queen takes, you go bishop h6. Why? Quick development, right? Knight d2, now you take the second bishop, and after pawn takes, you go queen g3, king d1, you go rook takes h3, rook takes, queen takes, and it's even more dangerous for white to take anything in this position. Like queen takes g6 runs into queen h1 check, and on the next move, white will lose a free rook on a1. Again, after bishop d3, you simply go queen d6, and then knight to f3 and bishop g4. We saw what happens if white plays pawn to h3. You just develop your knight, but let's make this position a little bit complicated. Instead of pawn to h3 right away, let's say white plays knight to c3. the knight has potential to sit on b5 and disturb our queen somehow. But in case of any attacks on your queen, just remember to keep a close eye on your g6 pawn. You don't want to lose that as well. So after knight c3 by white, since our opening was super dubious, our pieces need to be super active as well. So the c6 square is reserved for our queen's knight, just like I said. The only problem is if you play knight c6 at this time, white may chase your queen away. So you want to start with pawn to s6 first. This is logical. If bishop e3 is played, now this is when you develop your queen's knight ready to castle long. The other reasoning behind knight c6 is pawn to e5. You should get used to this. So let's say queen d2, because they want to castle long. That's all they can do. You can simply take the king's knight. Even after queen e2, it doesn't matter, because on the next move you want to go pawn to e5. Given a chance, let's say gf. First of all, you put your king to safety, they do the same, and then you go pawn to e5 if you want, or develop your minor pieces first, putting them on the most active squares. By the way, you could have taken the pawn on h2 if you wanted as well, equalizing the game instantly, but bishop g7 makes a lot of sense. If rook dg1 as an example, you can simply take the center pawn. That was the whole idea of bishop g7, by the way. And after rook takes, try to think again. If you knew the reason why you took on d4, you would definitely see that blocking with the knight is bad in this position. So you have to block this attack with the bishop, so that after bishop f5 check, you can just go king b8. So let's say pawn to h3. They don't want to lose their extra pawn. You go knight e5 anyways, rook g3, bishop h4. These are all possibilities. Not to say you're going to see this all the time. Rook g2, d4, let's say knight e4, attacking your queen, queen e6, attacking the a2 pawn, bishop f4, queen takes a2, king d1, knight takes d3, simplifying the game, and the game continues. There are times when white will want to play pawn to h3 very early to stop your bishop g4 pin on the knight. We saw how deadly that can be after white plays knight to f3. So after d4, g6, e4, f5, ef, d5, gf, hg, bishop d3, queen d6. This is the position I'm talking about. We saw that the top played move is knight to f3, but that allows us to develop our pieces quickly and secure our queen. So what if white starts with pawn to h3? You want to play knight c6, right? But maybe bishop b5 will be a problem, which is why a6 makes a lot of sense. So sometimes before you play knight c6, just consider playing a6 to stop anything. The moment white plays knight to f3, this is when you can think of playing bishop g4 anyways. And we're back to the same position that we looked at, since white can't take your bishop because of rook takes. Anyway, you can also play knight c6 instead of bishop g4 right away. So knight c6 is a standard way. Bishop g4 is coming anyways. Let's say pawn to c4, trying to be aggressive. In this gambit, whenever you see pawn to c4, I suggest you just take that pawn, leaving white with an isolated pawn on d4 like this. And after bishop takes, this is when you go bishop g4, ready to castle long. You didn't have to allow white's c-pawn to sit on c5. That was going to be bad for you. So let's say bishop takes g8. If you take white's light squared bishop, you will lose yours as well. So better start with bishop takes f3. And after queen takes, this is when you take white's light squared bishop. And let's say d5, what else? You go queen e5 check. So they have to play king f1, after which you go knight d4, pressurizing white, and that's how you continue playing against this early pawn to h3. So back to our initial position on the fifth move, where you play queen d6. Again, if you see this early pawn to h3 stopping your bishop g4 move, just remember to go s6, and after knight f3, this is when you go knight c6 or bishop g4 right away. But what if white changes his strategies and play queen f3? You know, stopping your bishop g4 idea, just go knight c6. That was the whole purpose of playing s6, by the way. If bishop f4, activating their London bishop to accomplish their mission, you don't want to abandon your g6 pawn. Remember, it's under attack by white's light squared bishop. So queen b4 check makes no sense. Just stay in your lane. White has to do something. If knight e2, you can go knight takes d4. This is bad for white. And if queen e3 is played, just go for the queen exchange, and after fe, you simply go bishop f5 to trade off the light squared bishops. This looks scary, but it's playable, very much playable. in rapid blitz and bullet. By the way, white doesn't even have bishop takes c7 due to rook c8. This is all they are going to do. The moment they retreat their bishop, you can now go knight b4, and there is some problem on the square and the rook. If knight a3, you can simply take on c2. See how the game is messed up. So at the end of the day, you are guaranteed to get back one of white's pawns and equalize material. Enough of this. But the question that begs to be answered is, can this idea also work against the king's pawn game? And the answer is yes. As you can see, the top played move again is pawn to d4, after which you can go pawn to f5 and start doing everything that I showed you. For example, after ef, you go d5, fg, hg, knight to f3. The movement of our pieces will always be the same. So this is more like a setup. e5 will be our main pawn break in the middle game. So here, I would start with queen d6 to prevent bishop f4 by white again, the London bishop. What about against the English opening or against the Queen's Gambit setup? For example, white starts with d4, then you go g6, and then instead of going pawn to e4, they play pawn to c4. This is what most d4 players like doing. Well, you still go pawn to f5. Now, this is the Dutch transposition, guys. I consider this to be better than the Dutch itself because of this pawn on g6, which you already played on the first move. You avoided the Staunton Gambit in advance. There is no queen h5 check. So white will have to play knight c3 first, preparing for pawn to e4. That's what they do. And now this is when you go bishop g7. And if you think about it, this is kind of the modern defense as well, where the key move has to be pawn to c5 so that you get rid of that knight and double up white's pawns along the c file. Let's say white gets greedy and plays pawn to e4 right away. Well, you can just take. That's it. If knight takes, this is when you go pawn to d5. If cd happens, that's a mistake. You take with the queen, and white is gonna be down a pawn in this position. Anyways, let's say white doesn't take on d5 and plays knight c3. Remember the key move in our modern defense, pawn to c5. Whenever you see white's knight sitting on c3, the whole idea is to double up white's pawns along the c file like this. This is not good, but in this particular position, you have a better move instead of taking the knight. If you zoom your eyeballs carefully, you will see that pawn to d4 is even more powerful than taking that knight. Besides, you have queen a5 check and you are going to win that pawn. If knight e4 is played, you can go queen a5 check if you want, but that pawn is defended, so you want to get rid of the defender of that pawn first. After bishop d3, you take that knight, and after bishop takes, this is when you can go queen a5 check and win that pawn, or just put your king to safety first. If white tries to hold on to that pawn, stopping queen a5 also, you simply go pawn to d3. Why? You're paving way for your dark squared bishop, attacking the rook. This is what we call a clearance sacrifice. If rook b1, you go queen d4, attacking everything. There is no queen takes d3 because of queen takes f2 check. If bishop d5 check, just play e6 and everything is under control once again. Let's say bishop d2, you go queen c2. This trade will be in your favor because the pawn will come with an attack. Plus, white's light squared bishop is already under attack. And so white has to find bishop e4, a stockfish move, after which you go queen takes c4, you are taking free pawns now. If white castles short, you take the free bishop. See how paralyzed the position is. And now let me show you the last line versus the c4 response. This is where white tries to be aggressive with a move pawn to h4 and h5 very early in the opening stage. For example, after d4, g6, c4, f5, you might see white playing pawn to h4 very early, which is a top engine move, by the way, trying to destroy your king side as quickly as they can. Well, what I recommend here is just to go knight to f6, and if pawn to h5, you just take. That's all. They have this tendency of sacrificing their rook on h5 to open up your king side completely. Stockfish supports this idea, by the way, if only white can find pawn to e4. And yes, this looks scary, but you can just go bishop g7. If queen h5, you just go king f8. Let them take the second pawn as well. Your king will be very safe on g8. If knight to f3, let's say they start bringing many pieces towards the king, you go pawn to d6 first, paving way for your light squared bishop. If queen d5 check, there's e6. If queen h5, you now start finding a way of exchanging the queens, because if you can manage to do that, you win most of your games. Guys, if you are scared of playing this line, take a look at what I'm talking about. In the Lichess database, black has never lost any game according to what I'm seeing here. All I see are draws and wins for black. So this is not for the faint-hearted. This is for aggressive players like myself and people who just want to try out something new in their 10 minutes games, blaze or bullet games, just to spice up their chess journey. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your support and for watching this video. If you found this information to be useful or entertaining, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Share this video if you can. I mean, that's how we grow this community. By the way, you can also follow me on Patreon, which is my membership page where I post other long form videos and premium content. The link is in the comment section down below and also in the description. That's how you support KaspaChess. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.